Sonoma, Matt, you're 25 degrees or so.
Yeah, we'll probably get to about 27, 28. So yeah, that's the perfect day for me. We get down to about 10 to 12 degrees overnight, so I can sleep soundly. And then it just pops up again every day, day in, day out.
I'll tell you, those who think, those who are California dreaming and think it's all hot, you wouldn't believe how hot it is in the UK today. It's about, where I am, it's 28, 29, Marlow, I'm sure. And it's, so forget your US.
The peak and pale people, what do they do?
Oh, they go right outside, no sunblock, drink heavily, fall asleep in the sun. And it's a good thing, but... And Eamon, you're in Dublin's fair city.
Yeah, I've got 13 today here in Dublin. So,
no way.
I am very pale for good reason.
Oh no, Dublin.
Matt, that looks like something cold and pink you've got in your glass there.
I have. I've got a new wine. I got a new wine that's coming in. We can talk about it later, but it's the Matt Parish rosé of Carignan and Mourvedre off some really old vines, and this is exactly what you need on a day that's 28 degrees.
Lovely.
Or any day, to be honest.
Very good. Okay, cool. Well, we'll kick off there. I see we're live on Facebook. We got a lot of people on, which is great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Eamon, the wine guy. I'm joined by my sidekick, Ray, the wine nut. Yeah. And really delighted to welcome Matt Parish and Scott Peterson to the Thirsty Tuesday tonight. Maybe some of the angels here may not be too aware that we've got a Naked Wines US business across the pond. We started over there around 8 years ago. I think we've got up to around 200,000 angels in the US. And we've also got a winery in Kenwood in Sonoma wine region, which is super exciting. And Matt and Scott, they are two absolute pillars of the US naked business. I mean that literally. They're two big men. And they've got a huge following over there. And, I was over there a couple of months ago just before the lockdown with Ray as well. And I certainly came home making it one of my missions for this year to give these guys a lot more love over in the UK, because I think anyone that tries their wines are blown away. So it's up to myself and Ray to get the good word out. And they're also great guys. Matt was one of the early guys on the phone to me, telling me about the impact of the COVID shutdowns on winemakers over in California, and that really kind of helped drive the thinking around launching our COVID support fund. And I know Scott has sent a lot of his friends, and Matt as well, their friends, our way to get support as well. So great winemakers and great kind of community guys as well. So I'm really looking forward to the chat tonight. If whatever you're drinking, let us know what you're drinking in the comments. See, lots of people are doing that already. If you've got a question for Matt or Scott or any of us, use the Q&A button below your screens there, and also on Facebook, and we'll get those questions over here as well. So we'll kick off there. Maybe Scott, you can start with just telling us a little about your background and how you got into wine in the first place.
Well, kind of serendipitous, actually. I was going to the University of Maine, thought I wanted to be a forester, and I was just too damn cold. Basically, the women in Maine would rather wrestle than hug or become intimate, I'm sure. So I headed to California. I was 19 years old, got a truck, got a dog, drove out, which is about 9,000 kilometers. So it's a good, the United States is very wide. But to make a very long story shorter, the first winery that I went to was in the Amador foothills. And there was 4 or 5 long-haired guys playing a bunch of Rasta music, dogs and kids and grapes. And it just looked like so much fun. And then I thought, damn, you could actually make a living doing this? And at that point, I was hooked. UC Davis was down the road, checked into the program, checked out of the program, and then headed to Sonoma County. And I've been here ever since. Yeah, I live in the town of Sonoma, about 15, 18 kilometers from our cooperative winery, nakedwines.com, in Kenwood. So I work with Maddie there. I work with another 15 Yahoos, more or less. And this would be my 32nd vintage. So I started making wine about 9 years old. And, 33, that makes about sense, right, Matt?
Yeah.
But that's how I get into it. It was kind of serendipitous. It was more of a lifestyle thing. And then being in the culinary arts, et cetera, working in restaurants. But, to me, wine is a luxury good. It's not food, shelter, and housing. It's something to be enjoyed and consumed by humans. So every wine that I make is truly molded and both mentally and physically with the fruit. But every year is different, and it's the coolest job in the whole wide world. Absolutely.
Sure.
Very good. Thank you. And Matt, you don't sound Californian, although you do after a few glasses of rosé. How did you end up as a Kiwi in California?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to blend in, I'm trying to blend in, Eamon, but hey, look, I ended up here. I in New Zealand when I was at university, you couldn't do winemaking as an undergraduate, so I did this stupid course called chemical engineering, and basically that really put my mind into what I wanted to do, which was winemaking. My father was in the liquor trade. My parents have got a Chardonnay Pinot vineyard under the Denali brand, which you've seen in the UK. So I was kind of in the wine business from the get-go. I kind of had to sort of take various routes, but I ended up doing a master's in viticulture and winemaking after my first degree, and then it was all on. Like Scotty, I kind of didn't like the cold so much. I actually wanted to get into the vineyards and be a viticulturalist. But I was basically out in a vineyard one day up in the Arbitrary Valley and just out of Marlborough, and I was watching the winemakers in the lab and tasting wine. They looked nice and cozy, and I was out pruning vines and I was freezing. So I basically decided that it was time to kind of hook over to the winemaking side. And so I spent many years as a sort of a traveling winemaker. In fact, I was based in Surrey for a little bit, working with Angela Muir, who's a master of wine in the UK, doing projects in France, and then went back to Australia and New Zealand and was just doing that flying winemaker sort of series of things, chasing the harvest, and ended up in Australia consulting for a while. And then Constellation, who is one of the big players in the global wine business, brought me to the US. They thought I knew something. So that was what brought me to the US. That was 17 years ago. So I haven't lost the accent, but I've had a lot of fun. So I worked for them for about 5 years as a group winemaker. Then I ponied into a chief winemaking role for Treasury. So Constellation is brands like Robert Mondavi, and then Treasury was brands like Beringer or Etude or Stag's Leap Winery. So I got to work with some pretty phenomenal high-end brands. But to be honest, I was kind of the guy behind the scenes helping other winemakers create these magical wines, and I learned a lot about California. And then I met up with Rowan Gormley, must have been eight years ago, just not long after the US business had started, and joined nakedwines.com and launched my own brand called Matt Parish. And since then it's been a dream, Eamon. It's been a dream. So
no doubt, never in doubt.
Yeah.
And a few people might have heard some of those names, Beringer, Mondavi, some of those big brands in the US. So what was it like, making those wines compared to, say, making your, equally delicious Matt Parish brand for Naked?
Yeah, I think the big thing is like if you take, for example, Beringer, they've got, Beringer Private Reserve, which is their top-notch wine. It's got a series of vineyards that they own and manage throughout, Napa Valley, up in the mountains and down on the flats. And so you've got this sort of consistent, high-end fruit coming in. And I think the biggest difference for me was when I set up Matt Parish is basically using that network I developed over 15 plus years to basically lock down some of these top-notch vineyards. Obviously, they're not owned by Beringer, but they've got growers and who've got equally good vineyards. Yeah, it's from there. It's all about fancy barrels and all the rest of it. So, yeah, so that's the big difference.
Okay, cool. And another brand, Scott, which people may be vaguely familiar with over here is Kendall Jackson, and particularly their Chardonnay. And I know you're part of that team back in the 90s. What was that like working there, and describe that wine to people, because we obviously did a recent Chardonnay vote, which split the base. But I think it was inspired by, you know, some of your early winemaking there.
Yeah, those were fun days. That was the mid '90s, and it was explosive growth. America's favorite Chardonnay, and it was a Chardonnay that was based on classic techniques. Chachon Montrachet, so fruit was picked very ripe. In our case with Kendall Jackson, was all coastal fruit. And basically, we would grow and just add another zero to the volume. So everything was barrel fermented, stored, their batonnage was employed, aged sur lie, and a fairly good slug of new oak. So we've had that, and then again, meaning add another zero, we would make 1,000 cases, 10,000 cases, 100,000 cases, then it became 1 million cases. But it was essentially the same classic winemaking style that people really liked. It's a style that goes in and out of favor. I think some people had come up with a silly name, ABC, anything but Chardonnay. I don't really like that group, but because I love Chardonnay, I like it. It allows me to manipulate the wine. It allows me to really put my stamp on it. And you'll find that in my rocks, ROX wines that I make in the US, that actually a container was just loaded for the UK. Thank you very much, Ray. But yeah, classically made Chardonnay. And to me, it never goes out of style. I like the richness. I like the texture. I like picking fruit very ripe, and basically an explosion of flavors.
So, Scotty, just on that, in terms of a spectrum, because Chardonnay is a bit like a chameleon, or it's a bit, I mean, it'll do whatever you want wherever. And so you are on that bigger, riper, richer Chardonnay style. But then the other side of the scale is, say, something like Chablis. Chablis is Chardonnay, but it's lean, typically no oak, but typically no oak. And so there's still a home for Chardonnay, but either you like it on a lean profile or you like it, and what you're serving up is the more voluptuous, rounder, richer style, American style, or not.
Naomi Campbell, Kim Kardashian. Voluptuousness. I like textures, et cetera. But yes, Chardonnay is one of the few varieties that can be manipulated, and either as a very like a Pouilly-Fuissé, Chablis style, that's stainless steel and very lean, and or the Chachon Montrachet or a classic California style.
So basically,
yes, like the bigger wines, the richer wines. Yeah.
So for anyone who's watching, and you and I have just been throwing various bits and pieces back and forth with one another. I think the key word, whether on the Naked Wines website, on any wine page, there's 3 tickers. It's like 3 little notes that give you a direction, a steer of what you can expect. And I guess the words, if you like something that has power and weight and roundness, you might look for, it would say oaky, rich Chardonnay. Alternatively, if you like something towards the Pinot Grigio light, fresh style, you'd go for simply the words unoaked Chardonnay, pure and fresh. Just there are signposts also on Naked's website, I guess, just to say, drink this, don't drink that. And also, basically, if you rate the wines, the system will tell you, you will like this or you won't like that. So there is some help there. Yeah, Amo.
So cool, thank you. So Matt, then back to you. Tell us Napa Cab, so Napa Cabernet Sauvignon, which is what you're kind of known for over in the US. We've seen some great stuff in the UK as well. For a tight Irishman like me, it can be quite pricey. So how would you convince us to kind of fork out maybe 20 quid over in the UK for a good bottle of Napa Cab? Why is it worth that extra money?
Well, I mean, it's like, I'm just trying to think of an analogy similar to what Scott used, but I'll use cars. I mean, if you want to drive a Datsun, then you can go for other wines. But if you want to drive the Cadillac, then you've got to go for Napa Cab. So I think that's pretty...
Can we have a 2020 reference other than the Cadillac?
Well, I mean, let's put it into UK speak. I mean, it's like sitting in a Range Rover, not that I've done that too many times, but, where you've got those big plush seats, and you just sort of fold in there. That's kind of the Napa Cab. But unfortunately, the big issue is that, land prices are horrendously expensive in the Bay Area. and Napa is the most expensive. And if you look at Napa cab prices, so I'll talk in US dollars. I think the pound's not too far off, maybe 0.8 or something like that. But the you're buying Napa cab grapes at the moment for around $6,500–7,000 a ton. So when you translate that into a bottle of wine, that's probably somewhere around $7 just for the grapes. I did a project many years ago, which you guys haven't seen, but it's in the US. Is that I said, right, where can we grow some outstanding Cabernet? And I teamed up with a guy called Scott McLeod, who basically started Francis Ford Coppola's Rubicon, which was like an iconic brand back in the 80s. And he's got a vineyard up in an area called El Dorado. And so the fruit cost there is 1/3 of what I pay in Napa. But what we do is we give it all the treatments that we do in a Napa vineyard or in a Napa-based program in a winery, fancy barrels, all the rest of it. And so basically the fruit cost from there is 1/3. And so that's kind of translates through the bottle cost. So, if you can afford it, and I can't see why you couldn't when you're driving a Cadillac, it's definitely, that's the reason it's so expensive. But if you're looking for, high quality alternatives, there are those. And the El Dorado is a great region. Paso Robles is another great region. So you're sort of going a little bit further afield. I do a little wine to another project off a new AVA called Cloverdale, Pine Mountain Cloverdale Peak. So you're kind of finding those spots. And Sonoma is also great value. Scotty knows that. And he makes some really plush, wines out of Sonoma, which, as the crow flies, it's only a mile away, but the price almost doubles as you go over that kind of Napa Sonoma divide. So, yeah, but that's it.
Yeah, very good. You're getting a bit of heat off the comments for your Datsun remarks. Not appreciated by some.
My first car was an orange Datsun 120Y, and that was the start of 3 orange cars. My father, who kindly purchased it for me, had worked out that the cheapest car was an orange one. So that was where the orange cars came from. So I've owned it. I've never owned a Cadillac, but I have the wine.
Very good. And so Scott, tell us when you decided to go it alone as an independent winemaker. What was that experience like for you in the US compared to where you were working before?
I was 35 at the height of the KJ Chardonnay boom, and I got an offer to consult in Mendoza, Argentina, for Nicholas Catena. So I helped start the Alamos brand, the Gascon brand, worked on obviously all the Catena brands. And at that point reached out or expanded and went over the Andes and worked in Chile. And that was based here in the States, but with 24-year contracts. So again, doing the dual vintages back and forth. And I did that for probably 8-9 years. And then still slowly building a consulting base here in Cali. And then as many winemakers dream to do, wanted to start my two of my own brand, or start with my own brand. And it was Napa Valley. It was called SP Drummer, or is called SP Drummer. And that was a Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc blend. That was, actually, it's kind of a cool story. My father was a retired dean, was a academic. And we were trying to price my first vintage, which was in 1999. This would have been in 2002 is when we first released it. And so you kind of taste the neighbors in Napa and what they were getting, et cetera. And we thought, well, $50 was a fair price. And the first account called Bounty Hunter that my father took it to wanted to buy it all. And, had I known then what I know now, I would have sold it all. But, I wanted to start in distribution and et cetera, et cetera. And those were the days where the cult wines, the cult Cabernet Sauvignons really took off in Napa. Small, independent guys, small production, very lavish wines, and at the time, expensive. So that went very well until about 2006, 2007, and I started Rumpus Cellars, which was a Sonoma coastal brand, because I wanted to kind of have fun with some obscure varieties for Cali. Albarino, Vermentino, a red blend based on Syrah and Petit Syrah. And that all went very, very well. It's expanded into 12 markets, no more or less. And then the Great Recession hit. And holy shit, I went from 8 clients down to 2 clients. I went from 11 markets down to 1 market. And things got really, really tight as a lot of winemakers experience, if you will. So for 3 or 4 years and kind of slugging along. And then I met, actually, I've known Matty probably, 10 years, 12 years, something like that, more socially. He enjoys Guinness now and again. So we're known to toss back a couple in Sonoma. But then Matt told me about this exciting project, nakedwines.com, and basically commissioned me to do a brand called ROX. Well, actually, I came up with the name. And I had to come up with a name quick. Come on, Scotty, do it. We need to get rolling. And it was in October. Again, a couple of Guinnesses. And so I deemed myself the retro winemaker. Retro, obsessive, extractive, ROX. And it took off. It was really cool. And then I brought my 2 brands and folded them into Naked Wines in 2016. So I'm fortunate to make 3 different brands, about 14 wines. Rumpus Cellars, Let the Wild Rumpus Begin, SP Drummer, and Rocks. So it's been, I know it's a long-winded question, but it's a long story too.
Question,
a bunch of fun, by the
what's
way.
the temperature in Sonoma? That was the question. Thank you.
Very good. And you had a tasting room open at one stage. Did you pouring your wines?
Oh yeah, it was called the Rumpus Room. Bunch of avant-garde art, and it was really cool. And I thought I wanted to, be a shopkeeper for the rest of my life. Get up there at 7 o'clock in the morning, sweep the streets, open things up, play some nice
like
music.
open all hours.
And then I tried to open 24 hours. No, and then I thought, oh my God, you got to actually show up. You got to be nice to people. You got to show up. And it's just, to be one place at one time consistently just didn't work. So I was able, again, to fold my brands into Naked Wines. I closed the shop after about 3 years. Best thing I ever did. Retail is very difficult.
And then how would you describe the experience as a naked winemaker then in comparison?
I'm purely making wine. Now I'm on the hunt for about 12 new vineyards, primarily in Sonoma and the county to the north, Mendo. I have a really cool, exciting new project there. But I was fortunate and fortunate for my angels that most of my contracts were 3-year contracts and they came up this year. So it's a great time to be sourcing fruit. It's like a kid in a candy store. Pricing is stable. It's very good. It's very attractive. There's a grower right now. Wants to sell me some Cabernet Sauvignon.
Can I ask you a question, maybe just to elaborate on the concept of you as a talented winemaker, and you told us where you've made wine around the world, and similarly with Matt. And then you're talking about growers, but you don't own a vineyard. Is that right? And
No.
You work with people who are, let's say, talented and focused on growing grapes, and you have this relationship with them where you can take the grapes and make something great out of it. Is that the sort of steps and the supply, and then you make the wine at Naked Wines Winery in America? Is that right?
Well, as Matt said, with lots of experience and with larger companies and just producing many different wines in different areas, you get to know the certain pockets that you like, the style of growers, the locations. And as you're developing a wine in your mind, I want plushness, I want ripe red fruits, I want black fruits, I want soft, sweet tannins. And then so now basically I'm chasing after those growers.
Yeah.
And I'll either go through brokers, I'll go through vineyard managers, which actually is probably the best web of contacts, and then just start looking at a bunch of vineyards. For instance,
So you're essentially opening up the talent pool or the breadth of your sourcing. And so you've got a vision of what your wine should taste like. And all the different landscapes that could potentially bring that. And you say, I'll have a little bit from here and a little bit from there. And then you make a relationship with people who are growing there. So you're essentially, you have more freedom, don't you? You're independent. They grow grapes. Naked gives you the funds, I guess. Well, I know, to buy those grapes in advance. And then, so you can pull it all together. But I think it's the sort of what you're reminding me of, because we've done about 12 or so Zooms with different winemakers around the world. But what your setup is more about is having the artistic license to just have a vision and then go out and sort of pull it all together and make something that the customers will love. And that's as a result of angel funding, 20 quid every month. We pass it over to you and then you just give it to the grower. Is that how you use it? Or?
Yeah, I love the budget too. So for instance, what I've did 3 days last week, and I do 2 to 3 days every week, And so I'll start talking with growers. I'll contract the fruit. And in that contract is an understanding that they're specifically growing for me and for my style. Whether we remove leaves, whether we want sunlight, whether we want a little bit of shade, etc. So you work throughout the vineyard year, the growing year with them. I do all my own contracts, all my own sourcing. Naked then steps in and does all the marketing and sales, which is tremendous. When I had my 2 brands, I spent 60% more or less of my time on marketing and sales, 20% probably actually making the wine, and then 20% worrying about the damn thing.
Wow.
And now that it's just taken away. So, you know, with that, I'm sorry?
That's massive. That's huge.
Yeah, and so I'm purely making wine. You know, for Naked, I make 14 different wines. And it's fun again. It's challenging again. Naked is a very stable company. We pay our bills, which says a lot in the agricultural, you know, aspect. And luckily, the Naked Angels like the wines I make, because there's no other platform where you can be graded by your consumers. And bottom line, I'm a consumer winemaker. I make my wines for consumers. I had a great, there was a very good friend of mine who I was chasing some Grenache at one time. It was from Lee Hudson, a renowned grower here in Carneros. And I wanted to pay an exorbitant amount of money for this Grenache. And my friend said, Scott, why don't you just buy a pallet, drink half of it, give it all away, because you'll never sell a Grenache from California. And point being is that I'm making wines that people like to enjoy. This is, you know, again, it's not food, shelter, and housing. This is a luxury product. And the simple buy again index says over this huge bell that people dig the wines. If not, it's not going to get funded, or I'm not going to make it.
Yeah. We listen to what the customers say. Yeah. Matt, same for you, is it?
Yeah, I think the thing, like, I remember the day that I met up with Scotty and we talked about, you know, he was kind of done with what we call the normal distribution system. In America, it's called a 3-tier distribution system. So that's where the producer sells to the middle person, which is a distributor, who sells to a retailer. 3 tiers. And it's basically the law that it has to be done that way in the majority of the country. And what people don't realize is that, you know, you're selling into 52 states. Each state has its own regulations, rules, and all the rest of it. So you've got to pick up a distributor in each state if you're trying to sell your own wine. So as a winemaker, even if you work in the companies, you spend probably at least 3 months of the year traveling state to state with your bag of wine, and lugging that around with a salesperson, trying to basically keep your listings in restaurants, or keep your listings or shelf space in supermarkets. And that's a huge strain. But the thing is that Scotty and I got into this because we want to make wine, you know. And, you know, if you got 3 months on the road, basically, you know, often you're talking to people that really aren't that knowledgeable or interested in wine, and that's fine. But, you know, it becomes, it's good fun at times, but it's some long days. The other thing is then you've got all this compliance to deal with, which is, you know, trying to sell and do the paperwork and taxes and excise and all this stuff for these 50 odd states. So, you know, pretty much before you know it, you're kind of lumbered with half your time is in the detail and selling. And obviously the risk to make that happen. And so you don't spend as much time in the winery. So, you know, we got into this game because we like making wine. I mean, I think with Naked, we're back to that, you know, and I think it comes through in terms of the resultant wines. You know, people always talk about the cost differences and stuff like that, but there's quality differences, you know. If I'm spending twice as much time in the winery than I would typically, that's got to have an impact, you know, and that's the outcome. That's what I see as the beauty, selfishly for me, is I don't have to do a shitload of paperwork, and I don't have to talk to some person who may carry it this week and probably won't carry it next week unless I turn up again, you know. So
talk to angels who appreciate. You're talking to the people who are enjoying and drinking your wine. You're having a conversation with them on your wall.
Yeah, and they keep us true too, you know. I mean, I think the thing that, you know, when I saw Scotty was having a couple of challenges. I mean, the guy makes these, you know, lush, you know, very approachable wines. I think there's a similarity in how we approach winemaking. As Scotty said, it's all about pleasure. You know, drinking wine should not be hard work. That's not the point. And so yeah, and I think that, you know, if you're in the traditional sort of distribution side, you're not getting any feedback. You're getting feedback from someone who's not actually drinking your wine. And here we get feedback. I mean, I get hundreds of feedback comments every week, and I read them all, because the customers are, they might not think it, but if you read them and you kind of aggregate the comments and then sort of try and see what they're really saying, you can really learn a lot, and that does go into the next vintage, and I can even see the differences between the two markets, and it's not unheard of that wineries make it's different styles for different markets, but you can see that. But I definitely use that feedback, and I value that feedback. So I think that's the cool thing, is that I'm getting feedback from someone who's actually drinking the wine, and not to lay a hand on it, but that was always the kind of the challenge with the critics. I mean, there's some really good critics, but at the end of the day, they're not buying your wine, So I think that's the other bit. So if my wine's rated 95% by the Angels, then that's a lot more kudos than getting a 95 in Spectator or whatever, So
yeah, that's good, Matt. Nice one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Ray, why don't we break there and you talk us through what other great winemakers have been sending you this week?
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure. Okay, let me see. Okay, so if the light is not too obtrusive, because we just passed the summer solstice, the longest day, and now the sun is battling me here. But so my job is, as wine director, to taste, find new winemakers, and then ensure that the quality and the style is right for Naked. And given that we're in lockdown, lots of wines come here. So this is today's workings. And so I just pulled forward a couple of wines. Guys, Scotty and Matt, you'll know Connie in Chile, but this is her Pedro Jimenez. So Pedro Jimenez, her white wine, it's about $7.99, but it's let's say it's Spanish, and it was brought to the Americas. It's what you use to make sherry, or it's from Jerez. But in Chile, she sort of rejuvenated it to be actually a really quaffing, drinking summer white. So what are we now? We're sort of July 1st-ish. This should be here tail end of the summer. We're going to have an Indian summer. I say it every year. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And so we'll be here late September. And also her Sauvignon Blanc. And just as an indicator of style, Chile, if you're to compare Chilean Sauvignon Blanc versus maybe a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, Chile might be more on a sort of a green profile, crisp and restrained, and New Zealand, maybe some of them might be more, exotic, tropical. And Connie comes on tour. We didn't have her on the Zoom. We might have her on the tour in future tastings, but she came on a tasting tour, and she hangs around with the Kiwis, and she hangs around with the different winemakers that she tastes. And she actually, I don't know, she's gone out and pursued a different profile for her wine. And so she's picked these grapes a little later just to get a bit more of that exuberance, but still keeping a Chilean profile. And that's not easy to do, to take a risk, to step out of your environmental limitations and push for a boundary of ripeness that exists in another country. So it's quite brave, and it's quite cool. And anyway, the wine is bloody gorgeous. It came today, and I rang her straight away. I was like, this is fantastic. So that will be a big hit. I'll skip over that one because I want to ask a question afterwards. And then lastly, this is Mike Peterson Pinot Noir, which we've been holding back. It's Ben Morvan Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir sometimes takes a bit of time to settle and integrate. And when Mike's wine arrived here at first, we thought it's yummy, but it's a bit sort of awkward. And it is now, I just checked in on it again today, and it's supple and round and very elegant. But the last wine is a wine that we don't sell. And Eamon, I'm putting you on the spot here because we haven't discussed this, but this is Jen Pfeiffer. It's a Moscato. So Moscato is the Italian word for muscat. So you say muscat or Moscato. It's the one grape that tastes like grape. So it's grapey. It's typically made, I wonder, can you see this? If I shake it like that, can you see it's the fizz in there? So it's slightly spritzy. It's only 5.5, 6% alcohol. So if you look at the label on the wine that you're drinking at the moment, it'll probably say 13 to 14.5, unless you're drinking some of Matt's American stuff, that's 16% stuff. But it's really light and fruity. And I just would love to know what the appetite for something that, and it's sweet, but it's deliciously sweet. So, you know, this would probably arrive here. So Jen asked us, would we consider doing this with the COVID, I'm just going to grab a bottle to drink, COVID support fund, which Eamon has been running. But I would be interested to know, just in the comments or somehow, would you like an Australian wine, white wine, slightly spritzy, 6% alcohol, very low, and it's sweet, you know, but it's not sickly. It's really fresh. Actually, it's probably the best Moscato I've tasted. So any thoughts on that, if you stick it in the comments, and then I'll hand back to you, Eamon.
Cool. Thanks very much, Ray. So yeah, just while we're on the COVID fund, we had a lady called Jennifer Buck on last week, who's based in the south of France, and she was telling us all about her woes through COVID. Maybe Matt, you could tell us a bit about, you know, how it's gone down, you know, and how your local winemakers have what they've been facing lately.
Yeah, I mean, look, unfortunately, I just don't think it's over. So we kind of, you know, we're still going. Obviously, it's similar to the UK where we're at. I mean, the numbers still seem to be climbing in the US, but from a winemaker perspective, you know, people may or may not know, but in the US, you know, a lot of small wineries really survive basically on their tasting rooms. So, you know, the tasting rooms and so basically visitors to their winery where they sell the wine, and a big part of it is once those visitors get there, they like your wine, they join the wine club, and then basically they become a wine club member and receive shipments 3-4 times a year. But obviously, if people aren't able to visit, they can't sell wine on the spot, and they can't have people joining the wine club. So, you know, the last sort of shipment for most went out in March, and that was a good shipment. But really, now we're starting to see that sort of starting to decline a little bit. What's really happening is that people are drinking a lot, but they're buying, call it those brands from the big companies out of the supermarkets and the like. So those, you know, alcohol sales are going up, but those are the things that are selling. The other thing that small producers do is they sell to local restaurants, or they sell mostly on premise. They're not sort of largely in supermarkets. So obviously those sales aren't happening either. So for many, it's a double whammy. The worst affected would be those that are selling only to restaurants, because there's just nothing happening there. And yeah, so we're seeing some struggles. So with the COVID fund, you know, I've worked with a couple of different small wineries, and that's been a fantastic injection, like life-saving injection, you know, which, you know, I'm sure we're going to hear many of the great stories coming out, and hopefully this thing kind of corrects itself before, you know, so that basically the help that they've got from nakedwines.com basically helps them weather this short-term storm, and it doesn't become a long-term nightmare. But yeah, it's a real challenge out there. I mean, you know, everyone tries to sound upbeat. I mean, I rang a winemaker the other day, and I was kind of upbeat, and he was like down in the doldrums, and he said, look, I just don't think I'm gonna last, you know. And he's been at it for 15, 20 years, you know. I mean, people are investing their lives in these businesses, you know, whether it's their original profession or it's their second career or whatever it is, but there's a lot on the line. So, I mean, agriculture, you kind of predict that 1 in every 5 or 1 in every 7 years you'll have something, you know, that'll happen, frost or whatever. But this is pretty serious, and the problem is that there's kind of no end to it. You know, the government's pitched in a lot of cash through what they call PPP loans, which is trying to keep sort of things going, and that's obviously the day it can't rectify a big structural issue, you know. And I think the biggest challenge is now, you know, restaurants are starting to open and things like that, but they've only got 25% capacity or something like that. So yeah, it's just really unclear what's going to happen, you know. But what we are seeing happening is those big, you know, if you go into a US supermarket, 80% of the wines is produced by half a dozen producers, these big producers. So might have different labels, but it's the same companies. And they've just got stronger in this exercise. So that's not good for the small guy. And that's why, you know, Naked Wines is so important. And that's why it's important to help these other small guys, you know, because we're kind of part of a greater community. So, Yeah,
Yeah,
so
well
that's
put.
what. Yeah.
Very good.
So I was trying to sound upbeat, but it's not. It's not that fun.
Well, I've got an upbeat question. I'm just going to some questions now from people. One for you, Scott. This from Adam on Facebook. How will the Raiders do this year? And also, maybe can you take us back to the day a couple of years ago when some UK Angels won a competition and experienced probably my dream day as a big NFL fan, tailgating with Scotty Peterson.
Well, the Raiders are moving to the Death Star, Vegas Death Star, and it should be wild. Absolutely. So you're referencing this really cool. It's called California Dreaming. I was on the tour, the Naked Tour UK 3 years ago, and there was three winemakers that presented some ideas, and I just kind of threw out, if you really wanted to see, a visceral experience with a visceral winemaker, then let's go tailgate what they call the Black Hole in the Raiders. So I picked them up here in Sonoma at 6 o'clock, and gates open at 7 a.m., right? 5 hours before the game. And we set up. They were such a wonderful couple, Michelle and what the hell was his name? Anyway, and then in typical UK fashion, it started to rain, and then it started to pour. But I brought ponchos and et cetera, and the Raider game is almost like a hip hop concert. There's several stages set up. The guy next to you purchased his seat. This isn't a corporate stadium. This is, and you go down the food aisle, and there's Asian food, and there's Mexican food, and everybody's barbecuing. Shots are flying around, drink shots, that is. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think they saw a good part of Northern Cal, and we still keep in touch today. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going to be traveling up to Vegas to see the Raiders.
Actually, it's down for me from Sonoma.
Right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. A couple times a year. My son just moved to Las Vegas about 2 weeks ago with CBD enterprise, et cetera. But he looks at the Death Star every day. I've got pictures of it. It's a glorious thing, Eamon. It really is.
Scotty and I, at this time of year, we normally have what we call a directors meeting in Las Vegas. And, that's probably been the worst part of this COVID.
The whole COVID thing. We couldn't fly to Vegas.
We haven't been able to do some high-level strategy planning.
Man.
Very good. I've got a question here, a good one actually. Around, you mentioned you guys don't own vineyards, so you buy grapes from growers. So if people are just confused about how that works, and maybe you could explain, as an independent winemaker who doesn't necessarily own vineyard and then goes up to the Naked Winery and makes wines there, how does all that work? Just to maybe explain that to people.
Do you want me to take it, Scotty?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, so as I said before, there's a lot of wineries that own their own vineyards, right? So they're sort of vertically integrated. But there's a lot of vineyards that operate as a standalone business. So their role is to grow grapes and sell those grapes. And so you either buy them, you typically buy them by a price per ton delivered, or ex farm gate is what they call it. So that grower may have 5 acres, they might have 500 acres. And so what you do is, and what Scotty's talking about at the moment is that we go out and we sign a contract with them for them to produce X number of tons of a certain variety, and we stipulate certain things to help guarantee a quality outcome. So we might say, hey, we want it cropped at this level, we want it managed this way, and we agree on a price. And
you're directing your style. Like, what they want to taste like. So they say, well, if you want me to do all that handiwork in the vineyard to get that, you're going to have to pay a bit more. And you go, okay, I'll pay a bit more, but that's what I want. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want it to look like a garden. I mean, it has to be absolutely, the fruit has to be exposed to the sunlight, not too much, not too little, to fully ripen. Especially in Napa Valley and parts of Sonoma. We dictate the style, the farming practices. And then we follow up and make sure that it's done. And Matt and I sample the fruit probably 2 or 3 weeks before vintage, once a week, and then it's every 3 days, then it's every other day. So we call the pick when it's going to be harvested, and then follow the protocols into the winery.
So you're controlling, and Matt, you'll sort of take it over from here, but you're controlling the wine making, well, the wine production, which involves grape growing and winemaking, but you are controlling it the whole way through. You just don't have the capital. You just don't have the overhead of owning land. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right. And from a simple quality thing will be that you know, we'll put in the sugar level that we want to ideally harvest at. And it comes down to basics, like, you know, Scotty was saying, we love it to look pristine or the like. You know, we know that every time a grower sends a team of people through the vineyard to do a certain activity, so they might remove some of the bunches or they might remove some of the shoots, we know that that costs, call it $300 a ton or $500 a ton. And so, yeah, that's how we kind of arrive on the price. And what Scotty was saying before is that pricing's good at the moment. I think it's in a much better state. Last couple of years, it's been going up 10, 15% per annum, which is hard to manage, you know, where you guys want to see consistent pricing. The angels want to see consistent pricing, but that's how it works. Yeah, we basically contract the grapes. They get delivered to the winery, and then we work out of the Naked Wines Kenwood facility, or we work out of another facility being winery, and that's how we do it.
Very good. Thanks for that. We've got a question here from 488176.
Oh, well.
How are the vineyards in Sonoma affected by the wildfires?
Interesting. 2017 was the first wildfire in my 30-year winemaking career that's been impacted by me. At nights, you could see the fire line from my house within, say, 2 miles, 3 miles. And smoke taint is a very ugly thing. You know, the grape skins are very porous. And if it's in an environment of toxicity, then it's going to absorb that. It directly relates to the wine. And as a winemaker, we've tried several tricks, both machines and finding agents and et cetera. And it's just a nasty, nasty thing. Smoke taint is problematic worldwide, certainly in Chile, Australia, parts of Oregon, parts of Washington. So yes, it has affected quite a bit. I rejected some fruit from smoke taint. 2017, we had problems also in 19 to the north. Man, get crop insurance. You know, this is the future. We're gonna have to deal with this year in and year out. In California, it's a very real deal. Scary as hell.
I think the other thing too is that, you know, in 17, what happened is that it happened at a time where Scott and I had brought a lot of very good quality fruit in. So I just brought in some Napa Cabs and Petit Verdot. Scott had some similar varieties come in, and basically it goes into lockdown. So the only people that are allowed into the area where the winery is firefighters and first responders. And so we couldn't get in. In fact, one day, Scotty and I basically went in with a news crew under the auspice. We were doing, you know, interviews and stuff like that, but we still didn't get very close. I got on New Zealand News, but that was about it. But that's the challenge, is that, you know, it goes for a period of time. So I think it was 10 days we couldn't get into the winery. So, you know, those are the critical days that you're trying to make the wine. So, for example, my Petit Verdot, I kind of didn't end up bottling that because it kind of just went into tank. It fermented by itself. It was never pumped over, which is kind of the extraction of the skins. And so that's the disappointing thing. So you spend years in the making or years in the development of these programs, and then basically, or wine, sorry, and then basically you can't manage them. That's the other challenge. But unfortunately, it's kind of, you know, as it gets drier, and it looks like it could be another challenging season this year because we've off a dry winter. And so basically it's pretty dry out there. And as people probably know, it's really been the electric company that's caused a lot of these issues. So they're basically shutting down the power quite often now. And that's a problem. So most wineries have invested in generators now at a big cost. We've just got one at the Kenwood winery. So yeah.
Mac, can I ask quickly, Eamon, I hope you don't mind, can you just bring us back to the rosé you were teasing us with at the beginning? And I'm not sure, Eamon, did you extrapolate? Has that's landed, has it, Eamon? Matt's rosé?
That is just landed in the UK, so hopefully we'll be live in a couple of weeks' time.
Very good. So
yeah, so this is out of Contra Costa County. So it's very close to San Francisco. It's a very old farming area, and it's basically, you know, being challenged by suburban sprawl. But it's growing. So I do a Zinfandel, and then this is made out of Carignan and Mourvedre, 135-year-old vines. So really old vines, particularly for California or anywhere for that matter. And basically handled really gently, whole bunch pressed, all the rest of it. It's sold out in no time in the US. They just kind of loved it, there's none left for summer here. So you've got the last of it. And
Matt, what does it taste like?
To me,
dry, sweet, rosé.
Yeah, so it's on the lighter sort of color sphere. You know what you'd see basically. I made it along very similar lines to. I mean, I love Bandoles. I love that sort of, you know, southern France rosé. So it's made in that sort of thing. So light berry fruit, a little bit of sort of melon, but it's really delicate and light to the touch. There's, you know, it's dry. It's not a sweet rosé, but there's also that California sweetness just naturally, you know. So
actually, Eamon, you and I had a schnifter off that around Matt's place back in Feb before it spread wildfire. But yeah, it's dry. It's like a Provençal style, light, pale, nice bit of texture, and it's pretty smart. It's very smart. I'm surprised at your work, Matt, but it's really impressive.
Well, you guys were originally going to take a Pinot Rosé out of Canero. So I call this Millennial Pink. I might be a little bit too on beat for you, Ray, but this other wine that originally was planned was more around that 80s sort of leggings, you know, hot pink leggings sort of color. So, and it just wasn't their fancy. I don't know why, but
we're almost past the watershed. You can start talking like that past 9 p.m., but until now you have to keep it clean, Matt. Okay. Amen.
And Matt, is there a good question from Mike here? Any plans for a Zinfandel? You were saying there's some other interesting grapes off that vineyard.
Yeah, so this vineyard, so they've got two basic plantings. One's a 35-year-old planting of Zin, and then there's a 135-year-old planting of Zin. So I'm making a small bottling of the 135, but there's an opportunity this year to really get stuck into this 35-year-old Zin. I did it last year in the US. I've been fine tuning it. I call it the 24 because it's 24 acres, and it's that classic sort of California style. I mean, basically, you know, you can go to the sort of, it's a hotter area, but it's not as hot as what you'd see a lot of entry-level Zins. But you really get this sort of, you can see by the color, it's got good intensity, darkness. I don't make it with American oak. It's made with French oak, so it's got some more savory sort of notes to it. It's still got that classic California spice, but it's got that rich, juicy California Zin taste to it. Yeah.
That real pop of fruit.
Yeah, and it's just pleasure, you know, like Scotty and I are all about pleasure, you know.
All about pleasure.
We're in the pleasure industry. We're here to serve.
We're in the pleasure industry.
Here to serve, sir.
My pleasure.
And speaking of pleasure, immense pleasure, Scotty, tell us about this new Chardonnay, the brass tacks that's going to be on the way to the UK.
This is going to be a kick, you guys. It's going to be good. It's developing now. This is of that spectrum, you know, of the Naomi Campbell versus Kim Kardashian. This is definitely peaking on the Kim Kardashian level.
Keep it clean, Scott. We're being warned.
This is for those people that really like expressive, mouth, lip smacking wine. It'll have it's a coastal Chardonnay from Mendocino. It was fermented. It's 100% malolactic. It's aged sur lie, so it's on the yeast cells to develop complexity and creaminess and texture. And then there's several different oak treatments that I'm giving it. So I'm putting it on a little bit of American oak for a while. Then I'm putting it on some different, what's called convection oak, and some medium toast and heavier toast. So it's going through 3 different toast levels to extract and really develop this harmonious, voluptuous, creme brulee type wine. It's hedonistic for sure, but you know, so am I. So it's you know, there's nothing simple about it. It's a lot of fun, and I was impressed with the UK Angels that we were voting 50-50, and it's probably a 50-50 wine. You know, you're absolutely going to love it, or it's going to be something that you give your mother-in-law, and she'll love it. So, but I'm excited to bring it to you guys. We're loading the container in about 30 days. So hopefully, Ray, it'll be released maybe late summer.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
No, brilliant. I think
it'd be cool. Remember when we tasted for Stylistic in Sonoma, a couple blocks from my house in February?
Yeah,
we all thought, whoa, this is a big one. But I think people are going to dig it. So here we go.
We were in Eamon's house that he'd rented, Eamon and Ruth's house, and yeah, it was very much a look around the kitchen as we tasted it before we went out for dinner. We went,
"What do you think? What do you think?
Are we good? Are we going to do this? This will be big." And that's it. So as you said, it's hedonistic. If you want that rich, in your face, big fruit, which my dad, my hero, he loves it. So whilst I have a commercial responsibility to think of all the UK angels in the back of my head, sometimes I go, will my dad like this? And I just thought that it is for those that there's still a place in the world for Chardonnay like that. And it is. And as we saw, 50% said yes and 50% said no. That's quite a strong Marmite wine. You love it or you hate it, as we say in the UK. So bring it on, and we'll clearly identify it on the Naked Wines website. As don't forget to look at the tickers. Those are the little messages underneath each wine that says it tastes like this, Scott made it like that. And we'll tell you, if you like crisp, fresh, fruity wines, walk away. Because it is.
If you like really good Chardonnay, go straight to Scott Peterson. And
that's it. Just click here. That's it. So I think it's about signposting. Yeah, Eamon.
Got a question here from Jess up in Northern Ireland, who's looking for affordable Californian wines because a lot out there is very expensive. Matt, maybe might be a good chance to talk about a place I visited when I was over there a few months back, Anderson Valley. I'm on the Santa Rita Hills Pinot at the moment, but I know you're looking at moving north to make that wine in future, and maybe the UK can get a look at that at some stage as well.
Yeah, I really hope so. So Santa Rita, which is where I've been doing it from, I've got one more vintage to go of that, and then I transitioned to another place called Anderson Valley. So Santa Rita is about 2 hours north of LA, so 6-7 hours south of San Francisco. Anderson Valley is about 3 hours north of San Francisco. And I've been doing a lot more work up there. The pricing of grapes, you know how I talked about Napa Cab pricing? Well, Santa Rita was doing similar things. And so basically the price and therefore the value to you guys just wasn't kind of making sense any longer. And I think I can do much better for a much better price out of Anderson Valley. It's definitely not a cheap area. I think it's the top-notch Pinot area in California. Scotty might argue a little bit because he does sort of Sonoma Coast or Russian River, but it's got these lovely, elegant, rich, bright cherry, dark cherry. I think it's just going to be more akin to what you guys like. And
when I think Anderson Valley, I think balance. I think balance, good natural acidity,
lovely acidity,
great color. Yeah, I'm excited to taste it. Definitely.
Yeah. So that's what's going on now. So I've gone in big, and hopefully, I mean, Scotty, I think probably about 1% of our wines goes to the UK. So we've got to change that fact, So if you guys can get on Ray and Eamon, that would be, we'd love you for that.
Very good. Another question: when is our range getting back to the full range? So about to move warehouse, which is very exciting for us, very boring for you. But what it means is we're hoping by July 13th, so middle of July, we will be at a full range again and offering closer delivery to when you order. So that's the plan at the moment. Obviously, things can go wrong, but that's what we're hoping to do. Ian, what glass are we drinking from? They're Zalto, Zalto. Get that question every week. But they're well worth the investment. What we got? Actually, for both of you, when you come over on UK tour, which of our wines, the UK Angels wines, are your favorites?
Scotty?
Let's see. I like the New Zealand guys. I like Rod East Hope's wines. I like Carlos wines out of the Rioja. I think they're pretty cool. And I think the English bubbles, I was very, very impressed with the Simpsons, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah. We had them on a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Big and rich and very yeasty. Yeah. Matt?
This English wine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on the Simpsons bubbles and also the Chardonnay that I tasted last time. And then basically, you know, I really love, you know, the Spanish wines and Portuguese wines. So from Oscar and Luis, and that's actually taken me for the US. I make some wines out of Spain and Portugal too to sell to the US Angels. So that's been a great fun. But yeah, those are the wines I like.
Very good. And actually, Matt, I might ask you quickly about that then, because I'm also looking at maybe at Luis's program, and I know he's opened up, started a new winery down in the Alentejo region in southern Portugal. I know you've been over. What do you think of the potential of that place?
Alentejo is amazing. I mean, if UK Angels are looking for fantastic value for money, rich, dark, generous red wines, and even some whites, I mean, I think it's just the quality versus the price is unbelievable. And Luis has done an amazing job. He's got this superb new winery. There's amazing vineyard. So, I mean, he's all over it. I mean, there's only one way but up for him. So that's great to see.
And that's Luis Vieira of the Monteria label, which lots of you will know about. So that's super exciting. I can't wait to try them. Right, guys. Well, we're past 9 o'clock, so we're out of time. But it's been an awesome chat. You know, catching up with you guys, and thank you so much for everything you're doing. And I think on behalf of all the Angels, we're looking forward to more of your wines in our glasses very soon. I think for you guys, we've got a shipment that's just landed in the UK, and we're hoping to have it available to you guys, including Matt Rosé, in a couple of weeks' time, which is great.
And
Matt, you've got a few more there.
Your way. Tino, it's the Maori word for perfection. It's the Cadillac we talked about. You've got to get some keys for this one, okay?
And there's lots of questions that have come up in the Q&A, but that we didn't get to all of them. But it's fantastic that everyone's been so interested and engaged. So it's a massive participation tonight. That's really awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And this is our second last one before our summer break. So next week we'll be somewhere in Barcelona. That's all I can say for now. But hopefully you can join us then. And until then, have a great week. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks, Ray, Matt, Scott. See you again.
Dudes, great to see you. Nice one. See you guys.